coming to you with something we're really excited about. We're putting some videos together kind of in anticipation of CE, and then that you can come back to for future reference as well. Going movement by movement, talking through, first of all, what is the movement pattern itself. We'll get a little demonstration. We'll talk through the points of performance, talk through some common faults, and then some shims and maybe some cues that you can provide as a coach to help ensure that your athletes are as successful as possible in executing this movement and frankly, other movements like it. So we're gonna start off this video with the 2 torpedo push press. Alex is gonna show you 3 reps right now. She's gonna show you 3 more repetitions facing the side so you can get another vantage point. Excellent, look at that. Woo. Alex, thank you very much. So, points of performance for the 2 torpedo push press. Working bottom up, feet are hip width distance apart. And as she comes into the front rack position, if you would.
I got excited.
That's all right. See, elbows are at least slightly in front of the weight. Yeah, excellent. You see from the side angle, they are not down underneath to where the weight is starting to suck the athlete forward. They also don't need to be as high as you can possibly get them because now we've kind of turned this into more of a tricep extension. So the weight, elbows, slightly in front of the weight. As Alex dips, so you dip and hold. You see right now her knees are forward and slightly out over her toes, but more importantly, she's created a straight line from her shoulder to her hip as if she was sliding down a wall. And then she's gonna punch through her feet to create upward momentum to get the weights overhead, ending with wrist over shoulder, over hip, over heel, stacked directly over her midline. Her abs are on right now, and she is not at all hyperextended through midline. And then she can come down to rest.
Oh man.
Great, so there generally are the points of performance of the push press. Feet hip width distance apart, elbows in front of the weight in the front rack position, vertical dip, hips and knees fully extend before you press overhead, and in the overhead position, we got a nice stacked line directly over the midfoot, directly over the midline. Alex, you can relax. Excellent. So let's say Alex was not as excellent an athlete as she is, and there were some things that were going awry with her push press. We see a couple more often than not, and we believe the one that we want you to look at in particular is going to be hyperextension of the back in the overhead. So you don't have to bring torpedoes up if you don't want to, but so if you look right now, you can kind of see with the way your shirt is positioned, she's hyperextended through her back right now. Alex, when you turn your abs on and squeeze your glutes together, see the difference there? We go back to hyperextended and then turn everything on. Awesome, you can come down and relax. So the point that we're getting at here is you're gonna see athletes that wanna work so hard to get overhead that they lose that activation of their core and then the force ends up dumping into their back. Obviously not what we are looking for. So a great cue that you can remind your athletes of, flex your abs, squeeze your glutes, tuck your ribs down to your belly button, tuck your hips underneath, anything like that. I don't know if you've got other cues you want to throw out there.
You threw out a lot right
Okay,
now.
all right, yeah, we'll go just a full bunch at a time. Now, sometimes we see athletes that hyperextend. Other times we see athletes that punch the weight out in front of them in the overhead position. So right here, you can see how we do not have a straight line from shoulder to wrist. And I bet you this feels just awful for Alex to hold, so you can come down and recover through there. That is a frontal plane infraction, right? If you think about the imaginary line going all the way up through the crown of your head, when we get weight out away from that, it becomes more difficult to manage. And then not only is it more difficult to manage, but putting your shoulders in a position to frankly be more likely for injury. So there's a case where we would come up and instruct the athlete to stack their wrists up over their midline. A great one here is a tactile cue where you can kind of pull the athlete's wrist back, making sure that they don't hyperextend through their midsection as a result, and keep going back and forth until you've got the position that you're looking for. What else did we talk about?
The dip.
The dip. I thought you said the tip. The dip. Let's talk about the dip. So 2 things actually that we want to address with the dip. First of all, we see some usually newer athletes to the movement that dip unnecessarily far in their push press. Yeah, awesome. It kind of becomes this like, are you doing a push press? Are you doing a thruster? Do you know? I don't know. What's going on here? So a reminder for all of us that the dip and drive of the push press is only designed to be 2 to 4 inches making sure that then you can keep that upright torso as we do it. And then once you've gotten the athlete to a position where they're just going those 2 to 4 inches, we got to make sure that once they've dipped, they drive out of that position fast. We see a lot of new athletes that will dip, drive, and then press. And we want to make sure that we are using the momentum of the dip and drive exactly to transfer that force through the hip extension, up into the shoulder, up into the elbow, to get all the way up to the overhead position itself. All right? Anything else that we wanted to dig into?
I was gonna say, one thing to note is it's okay to come down. It doesn't need to be super fast down, but as soon as you hit that depth of your dip, right up to the top, it should almost be spring-like, just like Connor's saying, but you can slow down, but then come right back up. It doesn't need to be this, like, sometimes we see, like, rapid fire, like, where all of a sudden the points performance out the window because people are trying to go way too fast. So make sure it's okay that they come down, but as soon as they hit the bottom of the depth, go right back up to that overhead position.
Yeah, bingo. And that kind of gets back into something that I hope everybody has in mind all the time when they're doing coaching: mechanics, consistency, and then intensity, right? Show me you can do it well, and then do it well over and over again, fast. So 2 last kind of bonus nuggets for the push press that we want to speak to here. First of all, I want to talk to you about, what do we want to talk to them about? Now, I told you I wasn't going to forget, and now I forgot. This is so funny.
The shins.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting further ahead of myself. You can tell us the first one.
We did a new order.
Okay, so it's thanks for staying with me. If you're at this point of the video, comment, Connor, get it together. Let's talk about shims. First of all, you can recreate everything with a 2 torpedo, with 1 torpedo. And I personally love to do both a strict press and a push press with a single torpedo. Strict press we're using to help athletes prepare the muscle groups that they're going to use for their push press. And then for you as a coach, you're looking for things like, are they in a proper overhead position? Are they hyperextended? Are their feet hip width distance apart? Are they punching the weight out in front of them? Really just keep an eye out for all those common faults that we were talking about before. And then, you, at risk of sounding just kind of too fast through it, you do it with 1 torpedo, and then you do it with 2 torpedoes, which is the first, there's the segue we were looking for, the first nugget that we wanted to address, which is there's a reason why we do 2 torpedo push press, or 2 torpedo anything, that isn't just this lets our athletes go heavier, right? Sometimes we get the question of, okay, well, if I'm using 2 25s for my push press, can I just use 150? And the answer to that is, I mean, you can, but you're missing out on, in particular, this element of stability that you have the chance to exercise with 2 torpedoes in your hand compared to 1. And when Alex is overhead here, you can see that now the weights are detached from one another. In theory, she could get some lateral displacement that you wouldn't be able to get with a single torpedo. So it's not just about the load, it's also about shoulder and core stability and your ability to manage both torpedoes up overhead at the same time. So there's nugget number 1. And then there's another thing that we wanted to talk about here that we were gonna geek out on. Was it just vertical knee? The forward knee? Oh, sure. Okay, awesome. Let's talk a little bit about hip extension and proper hip function generally. So I'm gonna ask you to do a good push press. You don't need the weight if you don't want it. A good push press. And watch Alex's hip. She's gonna do 3 more reps. I'm staring at her hip. I'm staring at her hip. Are you staring at her hip? And see right now her hip closes and then opens again. It is because the hip closes that we can then generate force in the process of going up overhead. If, however, Alex does something called a muted hip, where her hip never really closes in the first place. You can come out of that. I know that's a really uncomfortable position to be in for a long time. The hip chases the femur forward to where my hips are not closed right now. My knees are bent, but then in order for me to do anything with the weight, just because it's kind of like weird, like how strong are your quads and your knees, basically, rather than actually recruiting through the posterior chain, glutes and hamstrings, as we get going in the push press. And this happens all the time when athletes try to go really, really fast through their push press. And they'll start rebounding the reps, so they bring the weight right down, and it looks good at first, and then they kind of start to just chase it forward, and they think they're doing the right thing because they're cycling really fast and they're not as aware of their body. But then that's on us as coaches to make sure that we can come around, make sure that even as we introduce speed, we're staying back in the heel and using proper hip function to get the weight.
What's a good cue
Oh,
to
yeah.
help them understand?
Oh man, Alex, I'm so glad you asked. In the event you've got someone who's doing that, right, where their hips are just coming forward, first of all, I think the best thing you can do for them is just stop them and slow them down in the first place if they're just ripping through reps. And then what I would ask an athlete to do is, in this case, I need Alex to pull her hip back. I would say, Alex, pull your hips back about 2 inches. And then I would check in, how does this look compared to what she was doing? And I'd say, great, do a few more reps for me. And then if they continue to look good, then I would continue to let her ride. And in the event that her hips started to creep back forward over time, I might say, Alex, keep pulling your hips back. Remember, stay back in your heels as you dip. Remember, you gotta close the hip, feel your knees and your hips bend, things like that. And again, all of this, we should say, are tools for you to add to your coaching toolbox. This is not the way to do it. There are lots of shims that you can use to be effective, and the cue that works is the cue that works. So whatever helps you connect with your athletes and get them moving better, always a win in our books. That's what we've got for you for the 2 Torpedo push press. Thank you for watching this whole thing and for sticking around. If you've got thoughts on any of this, please do reach out to us. We're eager to help you be better. And if you've got suggestions or recommendations for videos like this, whether it be other movement patterns, other parts of class, anything that we can do to help you become better coaches, we are here to do exactly that. So thank you guys again. Have fun coaching as you always do, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.